Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this Friday, October 21st in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Up-and-coming actress Dylan Ratzlaff is stopping by today to tell us about her lead role as Rachel in Lifetime Television's An Amish Sin. An Amish Sin premieres on Saturday, October 29th. Because of Dylan's spirited nature, her parents started her in dance classes at the age of 3. She is trained in jazz, lyrical, contemporary, modern ballet, hip-hop, tap, circus, tumbling, and acro. She began her professional dance career working on projects such as Disney Channel's Descendants 3, alongside Kenny Ortega and A Cinderella Story, Christmas Wish. She made her acting debut in CBC's The Next Step, where she starred as Jacquie. Her other television credits include ABC's A Million Little Things, Lifetime's Doomsday Mom, and Netflix's Honey Girls. Most recently, she has joined the award-winning Freeform series Cruel Summer for its second season. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Locher Room, Dylan Ratzlaff. Hey, Dylan.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Thanks for being here. Very exciting. Congrats on An Amish Sin.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So tell me, how would you describe Rachel, the character you play, and the film in general?
Yeah, well, the film kind of is focused on the Amish community and specifically the sexual abuse that happens in that community. And so throughout her life, Rachel has been kind of stuck in this role of not knowing who she is. She's really suppressed by the Amish community, and things happen and she starts to feel like this isn't right. And she feels something inside of her that she knows that she needs to get rid of anything that's happening to her. And so she actually runs away. She finds the courage to run away from the Amish community. And through a series of events, she goes through this tumultuous journey of like being caught and then having to run away again. And then all of a sudden going to the big city where she's never even seen things or heard things like color. Color is not something that lives in the Amish community. And so she just like all of a sudden sees these bright things. And it's just it's a whole eye-opening experience for her. And through all of the suppression, she gets to find who she is. And so she's just a very courageous girl and someone who goes through some pretty terrible things. And it's actually based on a true story or true events. And so really kind of was crazy to go through that and put it towards Rachel. But yeah, she's super awesome. And I was so excited to like delve into that character.
I bet. Did you know, you yourself know much about the Amish community before taking on this project?
Okay, so funny because I feel like the stars just aligned for me when I booked this role because my lineage is Mennonite, and I don't actually practice like the strict rules. I always tell people like the strict Mennonites don't allow dancing, and I'm like a dancer. And so I kind of knew a few of the customs. And so I was like fortunate enough to call my Grammy, and she gave me lots of insight. She actually lived in the era where like men and women were separated in the church. And so it was just like crazy to think that that wasn't that long ago. And so I had like known a couple things about the Amish community, but it was just super interesting that like with my lineage and this being lead role, I was like, my parents were like, I think this was like kind of meant for you in a sense, because I could feel like I could connect to it in some sense, even though I don't practice kind of things I could kind of take back from what my Grammys told me and all of that. Yeah.
And you learn about it as well.
Totally. Yeah.
I love that you call her Grammy.
Yeah, my Grammy and Papa. I mean, she would even sometimes talk in German. So her dad actually was a pastor and would in like the communities here would actually preach in German for a bunch of people that couldn't understand English. And so she would sometimes talk to me and teach me things in German, which was so interesting. And so I know like the tiniest little sentences, I can't really properly pronounce them, but like just being that too, it's just like, it was just super cool because there's certain German words in the script that came up, or they call it Pennsylvanian Dutch, but it's very similar to German, but that's kind of the Amish language, is Pennsylvanian Dutch. But it was just like, there was definitely a lot of parallels.
Because I'm actually Dutch.
But
I don't speak Dutch. Which is, if you have the opportunity to learn from your family German, you should. I should have learned from my parents, and I didn't want to at that time, and I do regret it today.
Yeah. The only thing I know is, and I might be saying it kind of wrong, is Die hast wunderschöne Augen, and it means you have very beautiful eyes. So I'm like, what a great sentence she taught me, but that's pretty much the only thing I know.
That is a good sentence, though.
Yeah.
So this is, Rachel is the lead in An Amish Sin. What was the audition and screen test like for you?
Yeah, so it was very quick. So I just got the audition from my agent and had about 2 days to put it on tape and send it in. And so it was a fast process, especially for a lead role. You get a pretty good chunk of lines, and her end monologue was one of my audition sides, was like the ending thing. So it was like I had to piece together like her story, because there was kind of like a scene from the beginning, from the middle, and the end, and it's like that's all you get. And so it's like trying to piece together and learning about the Amish community in 2 days. It's like, okay, how much can I get from this information to put into my audition? And so threw it onto tape, and then it was a week later that I found out I got a call back. Now with COVID, all the callbacks were on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so, which is the weirdest experience. I'm in my apartment. I have like the weirdest setup. Like I have a table and then a chair on a table so I can put my computer on it, and then like my ring light. And you're just like standing there, and they ended up running like 30 minutes late. So it's like, I don't want to move in case I also get let into the audition room. So I'm just like standing there for like 30 minutes, like not knowing what to do, which is like so weird. But that's how that went.
And probably makes you more nervous, nerve-wracking when you're waiting.
So nervous. And like you have all these executive producers and the directors on, and you're like, it's a weird connection, right? Because you're not feeling their energy in person. It's like you're trying to connect with them over this like Zoom. And it was very interesting. It was a learning process for me. But after that, the day later, my agent called and said, the director wants to work with you again. And I was like, okay. So I got home and I went to go get ready, like get all my lines and start to prepare. And then she called me and she's like, actually, you booked the role. So there was no screen test. There was no chemistry read. There was not, like, I hadn't ever met the director. Like over Zoom I did, but not in person. And so it was this kind of like, did that really just happen? It was so interesting, because I was like, okay, I got this phone call that said I was like going to audition again. And then it was like, oh, I booked it. And I was like, what? I haven't even met anyone. And so it was so interesting. I've never experienced something like booking that massive of a role and not really having to jump crazy hoops, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing that it was a lead role, when they called and said you do have it, were you just thrilled?
Oh my gosh. When I first got the audition, I'm a pretty new actor. And I was like, this would be so awesome, but I think this is a little far beyond my reach. Like, I actually think I said that out loud to my mom, because I called her. I was like really busy at the time, and I was like, can you help me film this? I don't have time to go get coaching and all that. She's like, no, like, you'll be good, Dylan. Just like put your head down, work hard, and do it. And so once I got it, I was just like, first of all, I started crying. I was like, I couldn't believe it, but it was just like, okay, I can do this thing. Like, maybe I am actually okay in a sense, but it kind of just made all of my dreams, like, of wanting to be in something like this, like, totally reality at such a young age. Like, I was even talking to the executive producer. She's like, I have this big monologue at the end. She's like, people wait years to get a monologue. And I got to have it at 21. And I'm like, she's like, don't just like let that moment pass by, like let it sink in. And I was like, you're right. Like, to do this all at 21 and to be from a small town and all of that, I was just like, it was super surreal and intimidating. I was kind of freaking out. It was like you go through, like I said, it's like, the 5 stages of grief, kind of. It's like you're happy, and all of a sudden you like freak out.
You panic because now you have to do it.
Yeah. And then it's just so crazy. So from there, like, the director actually called me, and I'm so glad he did, because if he hadn't, I would have never gotten the script until like 5 days before shooting, which would have been crazy, having to like break down a whole script in 5 days. But he actually called me. He's like, let's meet up so I can give you the script and give you your homework. And I was like, okay, like not really sure what he was like meaning, but he gave me the script and gave me all these things he wanted me to research, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize like the scope of what we were all covering, because I didn't have the script. I only had the 3 scenes to work off of that I had in my audition. And so he really just was like, here are all of my Amish resources. And we ended up having, I like to call her like the Amish consult. She was the person that these stories were kind of based off of, and I had free range to message her, and so he passed along her information, and I was like so grateful for that, because that was an imperative part into the process of creating Rachel and figuring out how to attack this movie in a sense, and what angle to come at it from. But I was just so grateful.
Smart of the director. What's your director's name?
Michael Nankin, literally the most amazing person ever.
Yeah, that's really smart, because you do, it, like you said, it's the first lead role. You want to be as prepared as possible, and you're telling a true, something that's based in reality, and so having that extra knowledge, I'm sure, helped every day on set for you.
Totally. And it's like, not only it's like my first lead role, but like we're covering sexual abuse and we're covering the Amish community, and it's like you don't want to get it wrong trying to replicate a community in a sense. But our main joke on set was that, if the Amish community are mad at this, they're going to have to admit they watched it.
That's good.
Right?
I love that. Yeah.
That was kind of a joke about it.
I love that. So I understand you were there when your mom got to see the film for the first time.
Yes, I was. Oh my gosh. It was okay. She has like always been the most supportive person. And I was like, it doesn't have to be a sad scene. She's going to just see my face on that screen and start crying. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I could have said like nothing and she would have been bawling. So it was super interesting. But she honestly gave me the best compliment I think I could have ever gotten. She said, I forgot it was even you. And so like, to me, I'm like, that's a really great compliment. She's biased, but it was
that is a great compliment.
Yeah, it was really cool to see her like kind of go through the emotions, and she was very verbal. She's like, oh, why'd she do that? And she was actually being verbal about it and kind of expressing how she felt. And it was just super interesting, because like you work on this project for so long and you're like immersed in it. You know exactly what's happening throughout the whole film, and you know exactly what Rachel's going to do next. And for her to be like surprised, it was almost refreshing, and it refreshed the movie for me.
Oh, that's great. What do you hope? Now that it's done, it's coming out a week from tomorrow. What do you hope viewers take away from watching Rachel's journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that this just transcends the Amish community. It's about so many different communities out there, and dealing with sexual abuse, and how recognizing how hard it is to get out of that situation. And so I think if someone, because often you hear of people not telling anyone, it's like they keep this burden with them for so many years, that I hope if they watch this movie, it encourages them to go find a network to connect to, a social network that they can help them get through and out of that situation. We constantly said on set, like we're making this for one person, and if one person leaves the situation, we've done our job. And it's just been super important. And listening, because a part of my research was to talk to sexual abuse victims, and I was blown away by how many people in the community that I knew had experienced it. And it was heartbreaking. Like, I think that week I wasn't eating. Like, I was just like, I was so distraught about what happens, again, not just in the Amish community, but like with people around you. And so
yeah,
main goal is just to,
and people hide it, for many different reasons.
And it's the one thing I figured out is a lot of people think it's their fault. And that's the biggest thing, is that I want to show, is that they carry this burden because they think they've done something to bring this upon them. And it's such an interesting dynamic. And that's why they don't tell people, because they're afraid that people are going to be like, well, it was your fault. You did this. You put yourself in this situation, when really it's not that at all. It's way more than that. And so if we can just encourage people to find the courage to leave the situation, that's the main reason we made this movie. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Now we have to go back to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what, you couldn't audition. There wasn't a lot of work. So what were you doing during the pandemic?
Yeah. And so I'm also a dance teacher. So both worlds stopped for me. Like, I was like, well, maybe one world would just be put on pause and I can still work in the other world. And both completely shut down. And I live on a bell pepper farm. I think it's 97 acres. And so there's a lot of landscaping.
That's enormous.
It's pretty crazy. And I don't think I fully appreciated it as a child. Like, I had like cousins that lived on there, and it was like just built-in friends and I could just run around. I don't think I ever fully realized that as a kid. Like, people are living in apartments and I got this like massive yard. We even have like a man-made lake that can help with, like, if we ever need to use water, we can just bring it from the lake. And so we got to swim, and it was pretty amazing. But there's a lot of landscaping. So my dad said, well, there was 4 of us, or no, actually 6 of us, even my brother helped, doing landscaping for the summer. We were, the main job was getting the weeds out. And that's what I did not like it. And it was just like hours of that. And it was hot. But I was like, well, this made me appreciate that, like, okay, if I need to go to set or teach little kids dance, like, that is way better than picking weeds. And so a new appreciation for my job. But
I bet. You just told me you moved out for the first time. How does that feel?
Oh, it's amazing. I love having my own little place. And it's so funny because, like, all of a sudden I've become obsessed with buying things for my apartment. Like, most people are like, oh, I want to buy new clothes. I'm like, I can't wait to get a new plant for my apartment. Like, you just become so obsessed with like decorating it. And yeah, it was like a big accomplishment for me. So I actually bought the apartment. And so it was just like, thank you. It was just like such a massive thing. It's something I really wanted to save for. And I just worked really hard for it over the years. And I finally got to do it during a crazy market. I remember going to like all of these different open houses, and everything was going over asking. And, you know, we just wrote a letter and we're like, oh, can we just, like, it's her first time, like our first home. And he's like, you know, I bought this place when I was 18 and it was my first apartment. So I want her to have it. And so it was just like, it was super wonderful. And I'm just so happy to have it now.
Well, you should be really proud, because being a homeowner at 21 is a huge deal. There aren't many kids who can say that, no matter in what profession. I mean, that's very so smart.
My parents, I freak out about like electricity bills and stuff, and it's so funny. I'm like, I used too much electricity today, or okay, stop, like, everyone turn the lights off, like, and my dad's like, oh my gosh, Dylan, you need to, like, don't worry, it's not going to be that expensive. But like, I just worry about those little things now.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I said in the intro, you know, mom and dad put you into dance at age 3. What's your earliest memory of dancing?
Oh, actually, I did duos with my sister. And so my sister, she's 2 years older than me, and she's like, we're like twins, basically. We're in the same industry. Like, we do the same thing. She has blonde hair, I have brunette. Everyone calls us Sweet and Salty. So that's kind of our nickname. She is super sweet.
Too. Oh,
I'm salty. I'm more extroverted, and so that's why people think I'm salty. But anyways, I remember doing duos with her, and I think our first duo was like at age 5, and we were these like little pink costumes. I still have mine to this day. It's like such a fun memory to have. But she was like the main reason that I got into dance. It was, one, because I was maybe not the best acting child. And so my parents were like, we need to get your emotions out somewhere else. And it like ended up being the perfect outlet, but also because like my big sister was doing it and I wanted to do everything my big sister was doing.
Of course. Yeah.
And I just got so attached to it, and it worked out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I named like 25 dance styles that you are trained in. Do you have a particular favorite?
Oh gosh. You know, it's so funny because when people see me, I'm a bit shorter, and so they don't expect me to like flipping, like doing tricks and stuff. And so I love incorporating what's called acro. It's very similar to gymnastics, but into contemporary dance. So I always like to kind of fuse the two, and those are like my favorite. But I don't know, I think through different seasons of my life, I liked different styles. At one point, I really loved tap, which was so weird because now I don't like it at all, but it was like my favorite thing at the time. I loved being able to use my feet as like an instrument. It was a whole different like skill set of learning, because like with dance, you're using your whole body, but to be kind of restricted to only your feet, it's like so much more difficult to remember all these different little tap moves. So I fell in love with that process. But I would say now that I'm older and I'm teaching, I love contemporary the best, I would say.
Nice. I really didn't hear about acro until last season. Ellen DeGeneres' last season, she had on an acro group.
Yes.
That just blew me away. And I followed them on Instagram. Mm-hmm. More with their bodies, right? Like,
totally. It's really incredible the way it's evolved. I think people have pulled from gymnastics and from dance and like fused it together. So it's like using these impressive moves, but also like telling a story through dance. It's quite impressive. And I'm so glad I'm not a young dancer these days, because I look at how flexible all the little ones are and how like advanced, and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not competing these days, because I would not do well. It's just so, I think social media has changed the game so much. It's like you're able to just search up all these crazy people that are so extraordinary at what they do, and obviously we're inspired by that, and so they go and they try and they practice, and the kids are so resilient that they get it. And it's just, there's way beyond, like an 8-year-old is way beyond what I was able to do when I was 8, and it's very cool. But yeah, I'm just glad I'm not competing anymore.
But your first professional dance job was on Descendants 3 with Kenny Ortega. What do you remember about working with Kenny?
It was such a dream job. For me, High School Musical was like my favorite movie when I was younger. And so when I found out I was going to work with the director that directed that, it was a pretty like crazy moment.
Did you dance around the house?
Oh, all like totally. And it was awesome because a bunch of my friends got the job too. And so it was really like not feeling like going to work. It was truly a privilege. And he was so awesome on set. My favorite memory, but also scariest memory, was he said if he saw anyone yawn on set, they had to donate $2 to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and he would match it. So it was like this kind of weird contrast of like, you don't want to yawn in front of Kenny Ortega, but also like it's really cool that the donations go to Make-A-Wish. But it was like he would have like the God mic, and he would be like, say, I don't know, Dylan, I see you yawn $2. And so everyone on the set would hear it. Thankfully, it never happened to me because I was too scared, or like you really try to hide it. Because the hours are so long, right? I think that was actually my longest set day ever. It was 16 and a half hours. It was crazy. And so I was like, oh my gosh, everyone get their coffee, get their sugar, like do not yawn. But it was pretty incredible. And also to be on a set of that like magnitude, I mean, their budget is so crazy. Like you just see them like throwing money everywhere, the green screens, like the sets, and you really feel like you're a part of this like big project. And the cast members were so lovely. They were just super welcoming, and it was a massive cast. I think there was probably like 30 dancers in it. It was just It was super fun.
Were you a fan of the previous Descendants prior to getting Descendants 3?
I had known of it. I think I was a little too old when the first one came out, but what's really cool is a lot of my students love Descendants. And so even like next week is Halloween week, and everyone's like, I'm going to dress like Mal and Evie. And then I tell them like, do you know I was in Descendants 3? And then they're like, they freak out because they're like, oh, did you meet Mal? And I was like, yes, I got to meet Mal. So it's really cool seeing that part, because yeah, it's just, you just see their eyes light up and they're like, oh, you met the real Mal. And it's really cool to see that.
What age do you teach?
Oh my goodness. I teach a range. I teach anywhere from 3-year-olds to 18-year-olds. I don't know how I got into teaching that range, but yeah, my youngest is 3 to 4, and I basically say it's daycare. We give them wands and crowns and butterfly wings, and it's really just like daycare for them. We just do fun stuff. And then with obviously the 18-year-olds, I'm really challenging them and pushing them to go into professional dance careers if they want to, or other pathways. And I teach all styles, from ballet to jazz to contemporary to acro. It's like, in a sense, my full-time job. And then acting is not like a side hustle, but I call it a bit like that because it's not as consistent.
Yeah,
but
I mean, that's how it is in the acting world. You'll come and go.
And then once I get a job, it's like reversed, because then I'm like never teaching. So I'm like, okay, that's my side hustle in acting. So it's just, I always kind of just go to whatever industry is pulling me. And
Do you love teaching?
I do love it. I was super blessed to start at a young age. I think I started teaching at 18. Because I wasn't allowed to compete. So when I got onto the next step, which is a mockumentary about a dance studio, I was considered like a professional dancer. And so I was no longer allowed to compete at age 15, which was really sad. It was kind of like, those are your really exciting years. And when you feel like
can you explain that again? Why weren't you allowed to compete?
I was considered a professional dancer. And so then it's not fair for people that are just training in a dance studio to compete against a professional dancer.
Gotcha. That makes
Even
sense.
though like people my age were like even better than me or whatever, but it was more just because I had kind of solidified my spot as a professional dancer working on a television show. And so I like missed out on those competition years. So I had no longer really had anything to fill my time, because I could take the odd class here and there, but I was like, well, why not just start teaching? And so I started subbing for people, and then eventually started to create some good connections with studios, and then became a full-time teacher through that. So it was a really cool opportunity. I'm always blessed that, landscaping was kind of the hard job, but I've been blessed with like not having to work, say, in like retail or anything, because I got to work so young as a dance teacher. I'm truly fortunate for that.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite dance competition series that you watch on TV?
Oh, So You Think You Can Dance was my favorite. My mom and my sister and I, we would always watch that. It was just like super inspiring to see all of those people. And then there are things called dance conventions, which it's where they set up a weekend in a ballroom, and they put you through probably 8 classes, and then you get to compete. So it's like you get to work with all these like industry professionals. And so I started taking class from Mia Michaels, who was doing dances on So You Think You Can Dance. And then all of a sudden it's like what became like fantasy, it was like reality now. Like I was taking class from all these people that I'd watched for so many years. So it was really cool that they started doing that. And, it was exciting when they came to Vancouver. Usually they stay in the States. And so their one Canadian stop usually was Vancouver. And so it was super exciting when I got to do that. But yeah, I started getting to take class from these like amazing professionals. It's like if this like amazing actor like just comes and teaches in your city, and you get to have like this master class, and you just like try to be a sponge and take up everything that they say. It was a really cool opportunity.
I love that. And you're going to be judging, right? Competitions across Canada?
Yes, I got the opportunity last year. I went all the way to like St. John's, was kind of my furthest.
Nice.
That is a far flight. I don't think I realized it. I was like, and they're okay. Also, I do not understand. They're 4.5 hours ahead of me. I don't get the half hour. It really like messed me up. I was like, I don't really know what to think about this. It was so far. It was just weird. So yeah, I was judging, and it's a super fun experience to see talent across Canada. And then I also got to do it in Winnipeg was another one. I actually am going back to St. John's in a couple weeks. Where else did I go? I think maybe Lake Louise. I can't totally remember all the places I went, but it was just a super fun experience. Oh, Mont Tremblant was a good one. That's in Montreal. It was like this like ski resort. So along with the fact that I'm getting to judge, I'm getting to go to these cool places and explore. But it's just super fun to see the talent from across, and you get to see what like province is good at what, in a sense. Like Montreal, like in Mont Tremblant, like their hip hop was amazing. And I was like, I've never seen anything like it compared to BC. So you get to just see cool aspects of different dances and how they kind of have their own take on different genres. And it was just super interesting to see the full scope of what dance can be, in a sense.
Love that.
Yeah.
Would you like to compete on one of those competition series?
I'm always like, oh, being on So You Think You Can Dance would be kind of cool. But I've seen a lot on Dancing with the Stars. I don't know why I never really got into that, but now I'm seeing a lot more kind of videos of the dances, and I'm like, that would be so cool to be on Dancing with the Stars. So I'm definitely open to it. So if anyone contacts me, I would be like, sure, I'll definitely do it. But
I was hooked on that show for a long time.
Yeah,
not so much anymore, but I was.
Yeah, it's fun to watch that. I would definitely go on it.
Or just watching people who can dance well is mesmerizing sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. Even like my favorite kind of dance duo is Derek Huff and Julianne Hough. I just think they're so amazing. And the stuff
pretty
of what
talented.
they do. Oh my gosh. And you just watch them, and they're just not just good at dance. Like there's so many assets that they have that are just so cool. And so they've kind of always been like a big dance inspiration for me.
Yeah. They're quite the talented duo.
Totally. Yeah.
You made your acting debut, as I said, in The Next Step. What prompted you to make the transition into acting? Was it something you always wanted to do?
So when I was really young, I did commercials. So I did like Elmo Tickle Hands and for Real Friends, and that was basically because a teacher said, you're really good at performing on stage. You should just try this commercial thing. And so I think I found like a small agency and started going out. And it was like my brother did it and my sister. My brother actually booked more than I did. We called him the callback king because like literally any audition he went to, he got a call back. And I was like, he's a hockey player. I'm like, this is not even his like area of expertise yet. He's the one that's excelling, but he was a really cute kid. So I'll give that to him. But yeah, him the callback king. And so we did commercials, and then my teeth were really bad. And this was in the era that like, we kind of all had to look perfect to be in a commercial, like straight teeth. There was like a weird thing happening when I was young that like, yeah, I wouldn't get hired if I had braces basically. And so I got braces and took a break. Then when I got them off, I went back with my agency, and I think it was that like my dance teacher said, hey, there's an open call for the next step. You should audition. And so I put it on tape, and I was on vacation. This is not a proud moment for me. I was on vacation, spring break, and my mom goes, you're going to audition for this. And I said, but Mom, like this is my break. Like I just need my 2 weeks to not think about dance. So bad. And so I was like, I don't want to do it. And she's like, Dylan, just do it. So I was not happy about doing it. I was like, this is not what a vacation looks like. Anyway, so I was stubborn about it, which I'm like, I go back to her. I'm like, I'm really sorry I acted that way. Moms always do know best. So anyways, I put my audition on tape, and it was basically like a dance.
She was listening to that part.
Yeah, I don't like to admit it, but yeah, she knows what she's like my momager. I don't know if you've ever heard that term.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
She's a momager for sure, in a good way. Like she's not overbearing, but she's looking
out for you.
Yeah. So the way the next step audition worked is that I like had a little like dance thing I would do, and then you just like talk about yourself. So there was no like audition sides. So it was like you just they wanted to know your personality, because basically they build characters on the people that they meet in a sense. And so if they really like your personality, they'll take parts of it and then create this character almost. But with mine, they already had something in mind that they wanted, like an ex-girlfriend that becomes a girlfriend to one of my ex-boyfriend's best friends kind of thing. And so I had auditioned. They're like, we want you to come to the callback. And it was in Toronto, and like, it wasn't paid for anything. And so I was like, it's super expensive to fly. And like, for me not to get it, I think it's best that we just, we just stay home. And if they contact us again, then that's a different story. But I didn't go to the callback. And then a week later, they said, we want to have a Zoom call with her. And so I had a Zoom call with some of the writers and producers. And at the time I was 15. And so I was like, not really thinking much of it. I'm like, this is super exciting. Like I wasn't too nervous. And the day later, they're like, we're going to fly her out to Toronto so that we can get her to audition. And my parents were in Turkey on an anniversary. And so they're like, she can't fly by herself. And so they're contacting people, and it's either going to be my papa or my dance teacher. And I was like, I love my papa, but like, I need someone who knows the industry to help me get there. So I was like banking on the teacher, but I was like, it's so sweet he offered. But my dance teacher actually ended up taking me, which is so cool. I was in Toronto for, I think it was less than 24 hours. It was crazy. Wow. It was like a total whirlwind. But I got there, and this girl comes up to me and she goes, do you know the combo that we'll be filming today? And I was like, combo? Like, they kind of told me it was like going to be like a meet and greet kind of thing. And she's like, I'll teach you the choreography. And so she quickly taught me the choreography, and they brought us into what the set was. So I was on the set of the show, which I was like, it was just kind of crazy because I didn't realize where I was and all of that. And they had full cameras there. And they go to film this dance scene. I'm like, so grateful that she taught me the choreography, or else they would have just been like, oh, here, it's this. Okay, now go do it. Wow. But it was pretty unreal. And they're like, oh, Dylan, we haven't seen you on camera, so can you go front and center? I was like, okay, sure, yeah. And so we did that. And then what happened was we did like improv exercises for acting. And so I'd never done this in my life. And so I was like, well, I guess if I'm going to go down,
wow,
I better.
At 15, they threw you into improv.
Like, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. They did have like an acting coach on set who was leading the exercises. So it wasn't just like the director being like, here's your scenario, go. So that was kind of nice. But like, I was just like, okay, let's just do this. I might as well, like, if I'm going to fail, I should fail miserably. Like, I should just go for it. And so I don't know. I can't even remember if it went well or if it went bad. It was just such a blur. And so I got on that plane and I went home. And I think it was a week later that they're like, you got the role of Jacquie. You have to move out within a week. It was just like the craziest experience. So they hired dancers and taught them how to act on set as we were like filming. It was crazy. And then I was like, I actually really love this. And that's how I kind of got into acting. But it was just like, I don't know. And
well, I bet also having the teacher sort of helping probably was a great,
Totally.
Did you enjoy the improv?
I think I really did like it because they gave me like a good character that I could kind of like. My character was salty in a sense. And I was like talking to my ex-boyfriend and like accusing him of all these things. So it was like super fun for me to like kind of go off on him. And so I really enjoyed that. But then when I got in the show, like this show isn't really scripted. They give you a scenario and it's a lot of improv. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Like, we don't really know how to act, but sure, let's go for it. And naturally, most dancers have the ability to perform. Now, they're vastly different skill sets, but there are things in dance that can complement acting. And so there's things that I've had to double down on and really use for my dance experience, but also things I need to forget when I have become an actress. The main thing being that when you practice a dance, like you practice it to perfection. Like you can't do different movements. Like your finger has to be in place. And so I would do that with my acting. I would perfect, I'm going to move my hand here. I'm going to say this line this way. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And my acting coach was like, you cannot do that. Like in a sense, that's boring. And also then you're not getting into character. It's not organic, right? You're planning out how you're going to do it. You're not surrendering to the scene. And so that's something that I continually have to work on because it's so ingrained in my brain to be like, you need to practice it this way. It needs to look this way. Like, this is how the character is going to say this. And that's how I'm going to respond. And I've completely had to change that. And so
that's interesting because it is completely different. Yeah. I mean, dance is precision almost,
Mm-hmm. But again, then the storytelling aspect, like I'm able to portray a story and use my emotions. And I'm really grateful for that. And also like being comfortable in front of the camera, like it's different than being in front of an audience, but I felt some sort of comfort in a sense because I had that experience of like being thrown onto stage, doing this hard dance and feeling okay with that. And so I'm like, the camera's no different than this audience watching me. Like essentially an audience is going to be watching me do this. And so that's kind of like the way I looked at it. And so I had this like comfortability in front of the camera in a sense. But then if you tell me to public speak, that's one thing I can't do for some reason. That's the only thing that I'm like, people are like, you're an actor. And I'm like, it's so different.
Yeah. I mean, you speak so well. You're talking to me. It's the same thing.
But yeah, the public speaking's not for me. But the dancing and the acting, it just, for me, it complements each other really well. But again, pros and cons to everything. And so, 100%. Yeah, that's what series was so interesting because, like, I learned so many things and also become a part of the union. And what's this union? And what are all these union rules? And I'm like, okay, my mom had to move out with me because I was 15. So she had to move to Toronto for 2 months to film this. And then the next season, I didn't need a chaperone. So I lived by my roles with my sister and one other castmate, 16 years old, in my own apartment, filming a TV show, like no parentals. It was just crazy. It was, so many firsts in like kind of 1 year.
That's what happens when at your age, there's a lot of firsts.
Yeah.
And more firsts that will, still come. Who are some of you mentioned about Derek and his sister being your dance role models. Who are some of your acting role models now?
So interesting that you asked that because when, people have this thing when they're like, oh, this person got me, I saw the performance and it got me into acting. And like, for me, it was like a different way that I got into acting. And I find I'm heavily influenced by the people around me. Like I can see a performance on the screen and be really inspired by it, but I'm truly inspired by watching someone in the room. And so I found like with every set that I go on, I find like a new inspiration that I'm just like, okay, I need to watch everything they do. And I think I fall more in love with the process than the actual outcome, because for me, like I'm the most non-artistic artist you'll meet. Like, I went to school, hated English, loved math and science, like loved chemistry. Like, I loved like a formula in a sense.
Mm.
And so I love the process behind breaking down a script. And so I got the opportunity to work with Matthew Harrison on An Amish Sin, and he's an acting coach out here in Vancouver. And he broke down the script for me, and it was everything like, okay, this is your 3 acts. Within the 3 acts, there's 3 more acts. And within your scene, there's 3 acts in the scene. And it was just like he almost created this like equation for me on how to like unlock this story. And I was like, this is just fascinating to me. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, Matthew, I need to, like, I signed up for his online campus. I'm like, okay, I need to delve into like his brain. And I got so inspired by that. So like, I don't think I have like one person that's like a major acting inspiration, but I think it's like with every set that I go on, I like to pull from different actors, and specifically Kelly Martin and Rukia Bernard. Oh my gosh, just watching them. And I actually got to see Rukia recently, and it was just so awesome to see her again. She is just a wonderful human being. And the way we got to like collaborate on this one scene, because we were like, it doesn't totally make sense why I say something. Like, I share something pretty deep, and it was just kind of like out of the blue. And for me, like, to have so much trauma, like for Rachel, it didn't make sense for her to just like blurt it out. And so we got to like work together on what would make me say that. And it was just fascinating to watch her brain work. And again, just felt inspired by that. And
Well,
so
it's a really smart attitude to have, that when you're on set, to absorb everything around you.
I was saying it's the best like training you can get, and you're getting paid to like get trained in a
Yeah.
sense. It's such a weird thing. And
Yeah, 100%. You're really given a unique opportunity to learn from everything. Even just watching, the lighting people do their work, or just really absorbing everything and having
totally.
it's a free class. I mean,
Yeah, and so Michael, the director, this is why I say I got the golden ticket. Him and Matthew Harrison, it was like my golden ticket for this movie. He told me many things. He had always like a piece of advice for me every day. But the one thing was, he's like, do not leave the set. And I was like, don't leave the set. Like, okay. Like, I never went back to my chair or like tent, because in between each scene, through different setups, he would show me what lens they were using, why they were using it, what it was going to be to portray the story across, why there was going to be like a vignette around the Amish community, kind of like this dark circle enclosing the Amish community, and then everything changes when she goes into the real world. And it was just like, oh, I understand why everything is the way it is. And then in return made my acting better, knowing that like this lens was used to see what's going around her eyes. This lens is used to see what's happening in her thoughts. And so it was just like, okay, I'm getting an acting class, but I'm also getting like how to direct a movie. And I was like,
you were getting many free lessons.
Totally. And I was like so appreciative, because like the director he did not have to do that. Like, he could have gone in, done his job. He's brilliant. He knows what lens works. Like, he didn't have to explain to me why he was using that lens. But obviously, knowing that this was like my first lead role, it only made the film better. And it was super awesome that he did that. And so him and the DOP kind of worked together to explain why things were happening and the way they were happening, and what I needed to do in the scene.
What a lucky experience.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I just felt like, I mean, after those, because it was like 3 weeks that we were filming, 15 days, I had to take a week off work. I was like, okay, like off of dance teaching. I was like, I need to write down everything that I've just learned. It was just like, okay, let's journal. Let's like just decompress, because like there were so many things that were going on.
Soak it in.
Yeah.
You just finished the second season of Cruel Summer.
Yes.
Are you able to hint at the role you play?
Yeah, so I play like a principal role in the last episode. And so kind of my character helps portray for the main characters like what her next steps are and what like the third season kind of leads to. And so it's kind of a fun little scene. We're on we're kind of in like first class, like nice and posh, and it's supposed to be just like a nice interaction, but there's things behind the scene that are happening that like the viewers know about, but my character has no idea about. So it's a super fun little thing to like hint at what the next season will be.
Were you a fan of the show?
Pardon?
Were you a fan of the show before getting this role?
And of Jessica Biel, okay?
Yeah, that I did hear you were hoping to see
I
her
know
on set.
I didn't, but I was just like, okay, so I love the first season of The Sinner when she's in it. I was like so incredible. And so I was like kind of starstruck in a sense, but I didn't get to see her. But the fact that I got to be on her show, I was like, okay, this is a really cool moment for me. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Do you have a dream role you'd like to play?
Okay, so I've been asked this question lots, and my answer sometimes surprises people because it's not the most like thought-provoking acting role. But because I'm a dancer, I would love to do stunt work. And so be in a role where I could do stunt work. Now, I know sometimes they don't allow actors to do stunt work, like liabilities and all that, but I feel as though I could convince them because I'm pretty good at like being agile. And so something along like Marvel would be kind of cool to be some sort of like, I don't know, superhero. Again, like different, like so different from Amish Sin. Like that was very like thought-provoking and all that. Whereas this would be like, obviously still the acting would be pretty intense, but being able to like bring a little bit of stunt work into it, I think it would be a super fun world to like dive into in a sense. My boyfriend, so he's not in the acting world, but he got the opportunity to do stunts on Superman and Lois. He was like throwing footballs basically for the main actor, but he got to be part of the stunt department, and he would tell me things that would happen and all the rigs they would use, and I was like so fascinated by it, and I was like, okay, if you get to be in this department, I'm going to be in this department. So I think use stunts one time would be so cool.
I bet you'd be amazing. You know, with your dance skills, you would be incredible.
I'm not going to be like Tom Cruise and jump out of a plane. That's like one thing I probably won't do. But
I don't think I would either. But you know, some other things you might. Well, what would fans be surprised to know about you?
Oh, okay. This is kind of really funny, but I am obsessed with coffee to the point where like I get headaches if I don't have coffee. So like when I went to church, we would go and do the coffee station, and my Grammy would always give us like the littlest sip out of her coffee cup when we were like super young. And so it's like I was being trained to like drink coffee when I was older, but like I can't start my day without a good cup of coffee. So in my apartment, I needed a coffee bar. And so it was like imperative that when I searched for an apartment, I could have a little place for like a coffee station. And so my mom and she would often take me on a lot of trips for dance and for acting. And we would always like research before where we're going to go for coffee. Like it is pretty intense, our love for coffee. Maybe not. I'm like, there are worse things you could be like addicted to in a sense, but it's imperative.
Well, it's funny. I didn't start until the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah.
And
well, I drink. I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke.
Okay.
And I was trying to get off Diet Coke, so I decided to go for coffee. But I had never done coffee before.
So are you glad with that change?
Yeah, I mean, I still have Diet Coke here and there, but
yeah,
I do like it. I really didn't like it. I think growing up, like my mom drank it left and right, coffee, but you know, the smell was great, but I wasn't interested in drinking it. But now I do.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I live right by an ice cream place, and they have this cold brew coffee ice cream. And honestly, I swear, like I live in Abbotsford, it's so small, but it is the best ice cream I think in Canada. And the cold brew coffee, especially, it's called Banter ice cream. It is so good. But they have cold brew coffee, and it's like my go-to, and it takes everything in me to not walk there every night and to get a sweet cold brew ice cream.
Wow, love that. All right, before I let you go, favorite food.
Favorite food. Okay, is this a food like whipped cream? Is that? I love whipped cream.
Singer.
Favorite singer? Okay, his name is Rule, and he's from I think Australia. It's like
how do you spell that?
R-U-E-L.
Say it again.
R-U-E-L.
Oh, I'm gonna look that up.
I really like his stuff. Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of him.
It's good stuff. Yeah, but
okay, I'll look. Your favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation spot. Okay, my parents and we found this place called Bucerias. It's in Mexico, and it's like not super touristy. It's just off of like Puerto Vallarta, and it's just a lovely little town there. So Bucerias.
I do love Puerto Vallarta, so I like Mexico.
Yeah.
Favorite book.
Favorite book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Wow,
it's a whole.
I feel like somebody had you have all these answers ready. Favorite movie.
Okay, this is it's such a tough one for me, and it changes, But I just recently watched A Trip to Bountiful with Geraldine Page.
Oh,
Old movie.
yeah.
My director, he recommended to me, and I loved it. It was just a fun. So that was like my most recent favorite movie, but it changes all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And my last one was going to be Dancer, but I know it's Derek and it's Julianne. So
Yes, yes.
Dylan, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for spending this time.
Yes, thanks for having me. That was great.
You're so welcome. Everybody, next Saturday night, October 29th, right?
Yes, you got it.
On Lifetime Television. Please check out An Amish Sin. Dylan, you have a great weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Pleasure to meet you. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thank you to Dylan Ratzlaff for stopping by. And like I said, tune into Lifetime on October 29th to see An Amish Sin. Join me on Tuesday when 3-time Emmy Award-winning actress Katie McLean joins me live. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't. And if you like today's show, click the like button. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Please stay safe, and I'll see you next week.